I'm better at fantasy hockey.
This is the worst.
Mota Zita Banakesi, welcome into the Worst Fantasy Show. I am your host with the least, Jack Lucenay, coming to you at Farmer John time. We're cracking this one out nice and early today, getting a pre-record in for Monday's edition of Week 13 NFL Hearts and Farts. The guys who propped you up and the guys who let you down for your fantasy football glories and pains in this week 13 of Thanksgiving NFL football. So we will recap that as well as getting into some waivers, some all important waivers for week 14, aka the last week of the fantasy regular season for most of you. So this is make or break, win or get in for a lot of you guys out there. So we're going to go through some important waiver wire pickups. But without further ado, let's get into the Hearts. It was a shootout at the Cincinnati Corral. Cincinnati Bengals and the Pittsburgh Steelers got into a crazy whirlwind of a game, which I definitely did not see coming, especially on the Steelers side of things. Russell Wilson, Mr. Unlimited, is your number one fantasy quarterback of the week in this year of 2024 with the Pittsburgh Steelers. What? We had Jaden Daniels, Josh Allen, Caleb Williams, Anthony Richardson, Lamar Jackson, Bryce Young, AOC, a.k.a. Aiden O'Connell, Tua Tagovailoa, Mac Jones, Jordan Love, Joe Burrow getting it done on the other side of that shootout, Drake May, Jared Goff, and Sam Darnold rounding out your top fantasy quarterbacks. At the running back position, we got our shout out right at the top.
Thanks, Jamal.
Bucky Irving with his career high in rushing yardage, went over 150 rushing yards against the Carolina Panthers. This matchup came through for us. We were heavily invested on Bucky Irving, especially in all of my best ball lineups. Honestly, I was about to get wiped out until Bucky Irving went crazy and the late Adam Thielen and Isaiah Likely touchdowns, hysterically enough, helped me basically come close to at least breaking even in the late afternoon slate over on Underdog. So I'm putting all that on fantasy hockey because I'm hot in fantasy hockey right now. I finished top 10 back-to-back days. I've won $180 the last couple days in fantasy hockey. But then I pulled out some of the 100 and then I rolled the 80 the next day. And we only made back $60 on football. I keep talking to about myself in the third person. It's me and the show. The show's a separate entity. But basically got wiped out in football until, like I was saying, that very last fluke garbage play to Isaiah Likely and the Adam Thielen Renaissance game helped me. I think ended up winning like 60 something bucks. So I at least I made back the money that I put in originally. So that's all I care about. But beyond Bucky Irving, James Cook, Bijan Robinson, Najee Harris, Rico Dowdle, Brian Robinson, Joe Mixon, Josh Jacobs, Saquon Barkley getting it done again and again and again, even in a bad matchup against the Ravens. Might be the MVP of the season, and definitely to me is the MVP of the fantasy season. Kyron Williams, he's back in the end zone and back in our good graces. Chase Brown had a nice game here. That's another one I was hitting up in best ball late. Jonathan Taylor went over 100 scrimmage yards. Chris Rodriguez Unfortunately, we'll be on a bye week, so he's not going to be serviceable during this bye-apocalypse of week 14, but still someone to keep an eye on if Eckler ends up missing long-term, and if Brian Robinson should get injured again. He had a surprisingly good game, did Brian Robinson. I wasn't expecting him to go off against the Titans. I did have some Jaden Daniels and McLaurin shares. Just didn't expect it to be through B-Rob. I did expect them to win that game handily through the air, which they did. Alvin Kamara, Devon Achane, Antonio Gibson, Ray Davis found the end zone. David Montgomery back on Thursday. Derrick Henry wasn't, quite what you wanted, but still enough that it was serviceable. And Tyrone Tracy, shout out to him. He had a rough matchup, but he came through for you on Thursday. For the wide receivers, Scary Terry, Mike Evans, and Parker Washington.
Go fuck yourself.
I can't remember if it was Raul Boy or was somebody else who was asking me on the Sunday show about I remember they said Parker Washington, and I was very dismissive of Parker Washington, which definitely makes me look like an asshole, but that's just what happens in fantasy football. And it's funny because there's definitely bias there, and this happens so much. And it's I think I overlooked my own personal bias in that. And it's not that I didn't know who Parker Washington was. It was actually quite the opposite, in fact. I drafted him in Dynasty once upon a time as kind of a late darling that just never evolved or came through into anything, and so is no longer on my roster. And so I think there's a part of me where it's like, when Parker Washington and Nick Westbrook-Akine, who's another such character that did nothing on my Dynasty fantasy roster for years, and is all of a sudden this season having a quiet breakout. So no, I definitely did not see this monster Parker Washington wide receiver 3 on the week game coming. If you did, though, and you feel it in your gut, regardless of the advice I give you or anybody else gives you, you should always trust that inner feeling, because if you go against that and then, make the smart move or whatever, and listen to the fantasy analyst, even if it's a jamoke like me, I just think like that hurts more than, the play where it's like, oh, well, unless you played like a stud over them. But yeah, that was a bad one, because I remember they were asking me about like Pop Douglas, and that was the one I ended up going with. I think was Pop had a safe floor, and he didn't do shit. He had like 4 for 20. Hey, 420. But no, I definitely missed the Parker Washington call. I won't belabor the point, but I just like to hold myself accountable. Keenan Allen had a big game on Thursday. Adam Thielen had one of the sickest fucking catches you'll ever see in your life. I think it was on 4th down. They needed it, and he's like almost falling backwards, and with his left hand, just one hands this thing inbounds. If you haven't seen the highlight, like go watch the highlight and then run back and finish the rest of the show. But yeah, besides Old Man Thielen, DJ Moore, Nick Westbrook-Akine, I mentioned before, he had 2 touchdowns again. This guy's just had a touchdown in like 8 straight games now. Jaden Reed, Jamar Chase, Trey Tucker had a long one. BTJ, that was a one that kind of late decision for me. I threw BTJ in a bunch of lineups and it worked out. Nico Collins, Tyreek Hill, Lad McConkey had 9 for 117, but then he had the shoulder injury, so that's just something to monitor for next week. T. Higgins, Devontae Adams, Puka Nacua, George Pickens, Marvin Harrison Jr. Wasn't quite the shootout that we were hoping for, but he came through with the touchdown. Jacoby Myers got it done on volume, so did Justin Jefferson. Demarcus Robinson caught a touchdown. Drake London got it done on volume. And the law firm MVS caught another long touchdown, which also, again, that was part of my break-even lineup was MVS, Isaiah Likely, and Bucky Irving, amongst others. At the tight end position, Brock Bowers is lapping the field at this point. He has become the fantasy breaker at the tight end position. He had 26 fantasy points. The next closest was Jonnu Smith and Mark Andrews, depending how you tally it up in your leagues. They each had about 16. The Muth, Pat Fryermuth. Did you listen to the show last week? I've been telling everyone all season, don't play Pat Fryermuth. Don't play Pat Fryermuth. And then this week against Cincinnati, I said, hey, guys, you can play Pat Fryermuth. It's okay. And what does he do? He goes off for number 4 fantasy tight end on the week. Besides that, you had Trey McBride, Dalton Schultz. That was another one I overlooked. I can't remember who I picked over him, so hopefully it was one of these other guys. Sam Laporta had 2 touchdowns back on Thursday. Isaiah Likely caught that touchdown that really helped me. Austin Hooper and Hunter Henry split the work. Each had about 11 fantasy points. You also had Goddard, Ertz find the end zone, and Tucker Kraft, and Travis Kelce got it done just on PPR. And for defense, your fantasy defenses of the week were the Chargers, the Cowboys, the Steelers, the Seahawks, the Jets, and the Bills. And the Bills, if they're floating out there, because they were on a bye week at some point, they might be floating around. Pick them up. They play the Jets and the Patriots at home week 16, 17 for your fantasy championship. All right, let's get into some negative thoughts. Let's philander. Let's get into the thoughts.
Man, don't bullshit me.
Bullshit.
Bullshit. Bullshit. Bullshit.
Bullshit. You said so bullshit.
Patrick Mahomes, we just expect better of you. Cooper Rush, you had the matchup. Geno Smith, same thing. Baker Mayfield also only had about 10 fantasy points. But the guys who really crushed you this week, Justin Herbert and Kirk Cousins, did not, in fact, have a shootout. They had a fart out. They were both under 10 fantasy points, right around 5, actually, fantasy points. Really terrible game for both of them. And Trevor Lawrence, unfortunately, took a really nasty illegal hit. I think the kid's name on Texans was Al Shafir or something like that. But it was definitely a dirty hit. T-Law was sliding. He launched himself late, and he threw a forearm at the dude's head. Like, basically everything that you are not supposed to do, he did on that play. The announcer said it. So T-Law, unfortunately, got knocked out of the game. We might not see him for the rest of the year, so it might be Mac Jones time again. For running backs, James Conner, Jahmyr Gibbs, Rachaad White, it wasn't bad, but it wasn't great either. It was like right around 10 to 12-ish fantasy points, depending on your league settings. In the under 10 club, though, DeAndre Swift, CMC, this is the big one, guys. CMC down and hurt again, and it's already been announced potentially that it's for the rest of the season, and I wouldn't doubt it because San Francisco is not making the playoffs this year, and I think they're starting to realize that, and they might just start shutting players down. Like, we might see Brock Purdy, George Kittle, like we could see some of these guys get shut down the rest of the way. That wouldn't completely shock me, to be honest. This is a lost year for San Francisco, unfortunately, and for CMC. You know, it's always the concern, the injury bug after the monster season. But, you know, man, this is, the CMC's, because of this, CMC is going to end up being one of the biggest busts of the year. Jaylen Warren is fetch. Stop trying to chase Jaylen Warren. I keep telling people. ET non-factor. ETN is just, again, you talk about a guy who's actually been present most of the year and has been an abject bust. ETN, who was drafted in around the same place as like Saquon and Derrick Henry. It's like you were making the choice between kind of those three. And daddy, if you took ETN, it was the wrong choice. Aaron Jones kind of, got himself out of this list with a very late touchdown. Tony Pollard, Pacheco, and Hunt splitting the work. Jonathan Brooks is just a non-factor. He's just going to be slowly working his way in. But Chuba Hubbard, God, I feel bad for this kid because he's been so good all season. But it is a tough matchup. The Tampa Bay run defense with Vita Vea, when he's there, is stout. and they held him down. And then on top of it, he was the one that fumbled the game away late, and inevitably let the Bucs win that matchup. You also had Ken Walker and Breece Hall. Breece Hall has just been incredibly disappointing this year. At the wide receiver position, JSN just 4 for 74. Amon-Ra just 5 for 73. Zay Flowers just 3 for 74. Kind of a running theme for the wide receivers this week is like, if you didn't get the touchdown, you didn't really get a lot of huge PPR games from some big names. So like you had Jalen Waddle, AJ Brown, DK Metcalf, who was already dealing with a shoulder injury and has now tweaked his knee. So they say he should be good to go, but just note that DK Metcalf is at a point where he's dealing with a lot of injuries. He's seeing a lot of targets, but he's not catching a lot of them. So I think, the DK Metcalf struggles have been because of the injuries. In fact, that was the big decision I had to make in my main redraft league. I ended up benching him for Brian Thomas Jr. That was the right decision. I still probably won't win this week because of stupid Kirk Cousins who let me down at the quarterback position in a big way. I could have started Will Levis and I would have had a better week. So that's actually probably going to literally cost me my matchup because I'm up 13 points, but he has Broncos defense and Cortland Sutton, so I'm fucked. Where was I here? Oh, yeah. Deebo Samuel. Again, just the whole 49ers, except for George Kittle and Brock Purdy at times, has been thoroughly disappointing. Like you talk about Brandon Ayuk, Deebo Samuel, and CMC in the seasons they've had. Yikes. Jordan Addison wasn't good to chase those points. Jawan Jennings, again, just being affected by the 49ers' woes here. And it was a snowy game, and they got their asses kicked in Buffalo. Like, this just was a bad game for the Niners all around. Bad weather game, too. Like, you talk about them. It gets overlooked. The Niners are one of these fair weather teams that, in California. Michael Pittman, I told you. Michael Pittman is not a thing this year with Anthony Richardson, unfortunately. Garrett, he's also dealing with an injury. They mentioned it on the broadcast. Garrett Wilson, disappointing day. Calvin Ridley, just 2 for 43. Khalil Shakir, again, snow game. CeeDee Lamb going back to the Thanksgiving game. Dealing with a shoulder injury. He should be fine for week 14, but at what point do they just shut him down? Because obviously the Cowboys aren't going anywhere. The only thing stopping them from doing that is actually just complete idiocy from the coaching staff and ownership, which is entirely possible. So maybe he does play out the rest of the season nonsensically. Darnell Mooney, disappointing day. Pop Douglas, I only put him in here to kick myself again for picking him over Parker Washington. I said it could be a Tank Dell day. It was not a Tank Dell day. Cooper Kupp, disappointing day. Tyler Lockett, Amari Cooper, and Quentin Johnston. And then for the tight end position.
Who scored more than Kyle Pitts this week?
Everybody. Literally fucking everybody. The referees, the assistant coaches, the linesmen, the fucking people in the stands, fucking the guy in the plane doing the skywriting, me at home doing this stupid fucking podcast. We all scored the same amount of points as Kyle Pitts, which was a big fat fucking 0. I had to up. This is how much I had to up the game this week, all right? I found 6 entire tight end rooms. And when I say entire, guys, like I could have made this list a lot longer if I took just pairs. Like Austin Hooper and Hunter Henry. Bro, they outscored him by fucking 20-something points. No. I went deep dive. These are 6 entire tight end rooms. 3 men who scored more than Kyle Pitts individually, meaning they at least had 1 catch. So we'll start with some of the more obvious ones, all right? The Bengals, the Cincinnati Bengals tight end room. Mike Gesicki, Tanner Hudson, Drew Sample. Yes. All right, let's get a little more difficult. The Saints tight end room. Taysom Hill before getting injured. Jawan Johnson, Foster Moreau. Yes. Okay. That one's not that hard. How about the Cardinals? Trey McBride, Elijah Higgins, and Tip Ryman? Check. You got it. All right. Not hard enough, you say. The Pittsburgh Steelers tight end room. Pat Freiermuth, Mecole Pruitt, and Darnell Washington. Put a big old fucking check mark. That's not hard enough, Jack. I need next level difficulty. I want guys that nobody has ever heard of. All right, let me give you the Colts tight end room. How about Alec Ogletree, Mo Alley Cox, and Will Mallory? Oh, but Jack, that's not hard enough. I play in a 32-team dynasty league. All right, fuck you. I will give you a tight end room of 3 names that I guarantee that 90 to 99% of the fantasy community, I'm not talking about NFL fans, I'm talking about people who actively play fantasy football, 90 to 99% of them, I bet, would not be able to give me all 3 of these names. All right. They might give me 2. If you can give me 3, I'm going to say the team and I'll give you a pause. And if you can name all 3 teams, know that you, my friend, are an absolute fantasy football sicko. All right. The Los Angeles Chargers. You thought I was going to make it easy and say the Rams. Nah. The Chargers, my friend. All right. Name me the 3 tight ends for the Los Angeles Chargers. Go. All right. Will Dissly, that's the easy one. Stone Smart with 2 T's. I know there's some of you out there that got that one, but there's no way. Who the hell out here knows who the fuck Tucker Fisk is? Bro, we got Fisk in the Strange. Because Brendan Strange also outscored Kyle Pitts, by the way. Listen to some of these names, some of these fun names I pulled. Tucker Fisk, Josh Weil, Charlie Werner, Nick Vanette, Durham Smythe, Quinton Morris. Bro, we got Zach Morris up in here scoring more points than Kyle Pitts. But disaster for tight end. And even I did not expect it to be this bad. I thought he had been freed of the shackles that were Arthur Smith's offense. But nah, he's been even worse this year. But otherwise, besides Kyle Pitts, you also had Evan Ingram. Taysom Hill got injured. But even that, like, he had 5 receptions for 37 yards and 5 rushes for 10 yards. It wasn't great, but he was hitting the floor even if he wasn't hitting the ceiling. And then he got hurt. But he was actively involved. Schoonmaker and Cole Kmet back on Thursday, disappointing games. Hawkinson, he got hit in the munt. Johnny Munt scored the touchdown, so I took that away from TJ. Cade Otton, Jesus. It's like he was trying to impress me with a 4 for 20 line, 420, hey. But we needed a big game from you, Cade Otton, and it was against the Carolina Panthers. Worst defense against fantasy tight ends. Did not come through. This is one of those process over results type of things, but it is what it is. And then, George Kittle had an absolutely wretched game. Only 1 reception for 7 yards, but it was still more than Kyle Pitts. Whew. On defense, the Texans, Lions, Chiefs, Colts, Pats, and the Commanders, even though they got 11 points, kind of a letdown. Let's get into some waivers.
The fuck? The fuck? The fuck is in the air. The fuck? There's white shit everywhere. The fuck? I must be fucking baked and this shit's probably fake. The fucking hell did I just take? The fuck?
So just a reminder, last week's show was very focused on getting ready for this week. So hopefully you took that advice and you already have a lot of these pickups. But we were looking ahead to week 14. because of the bye weeks. So the Ravens, the Broncos, the Texans, the Colts, the Patriots, and the Commanders are all going to be on bye for week 14, which is going to be a very important week for a lot of you out there trying to get into these fantasy playoffs. This is the last week of the fantasy regular season. So, looking at the quarterbacks, Bryce Young is going to be at Philadelphia. You got Cooper Rush. I like him to score a lot of points. He's going to be versus Cincinnati Bengals, who just got eviscerated by the Steelers. Drew Lock, I'm assuming, is going to be the starter for the Giants. And then in the plus matchup against the Saints, you could do worse. I like Aiden O'Connell. He's going to be against Tampa Bay. Again, you could do worse. And then even for the rest of the playoffs, this is more a super flex deep dive, but Atlanta, Jacksonville, and at New Orleans are not bad matchups. And then Mac Jones, again, just in super flex, you're needing to add warm bodies for quarterback. Make sure you get him. For running back, this is where it gets really, really rough. Basically, it's a lot of handcuffs. So you're looking at like the Blake Corums of the world, the Trey Bensons of the world. If they're still out on your waivers, they should definitely be picked up and, are spot start worthy on a week like this. Devin Singletary and Sean Tucker. So, kind of a lot of ancillary and auxiliary type of guys that you're going to be looking at for the running back position. The other thing with the running backs is, a lot of the guys that are going to be kind of spot start ads are not going to be available to you. So you're looking at like the Commanders guys, whether that's Chris Rodriguez or Jeremy McNichols. So you're going to have to really deep dive. So like, and you're not even going to be able to use like an Antonio Gibson, for example. So these are a lot of the guys that are on waivers, right? So again, I think you're really going to have to look at like the handcuff dudes and just play them and hope for the best. One guy I want to talk about, I'm just looking for his name here. Sincere McCormick, suddenly getting work. He had 12 carries for 64 yards, and he had 2 receptions. So he's a guy worth a spot start at Tampa Bay. Also, go look right now and see if either Isaac Garendo or Jordan Mason are available for the San Francisco 49ers. Mason might have got dropped. The person might have had the foresight to keep him, but you could pick up Garendo, who's probably on waivers. He scored a touchdown. So again, you're going to be looking for kind of desperation spot starts as far as the running back position. The wide receivers, it gets a little bit better. You have, again, remember your Noah Brown, Devon Bailey, Rashad Bateman types are going to be on bye week. So we're looking at like Nick Westbrook-Akine, who just did it again, 2 more touchdowns. Guys got if you're going to chase touchdown, a guy who's done it 8 weeks in a row, and Will Levis is just throwing it everywhere, and they get Jacksonville as the matchup, okay, fine. This is the week where you can chase that. Bears wide receiver, if Roma Dunes especially is out there, and if Keenan Allen is dealing with some kind of injuries, I'd go back to that. Well, tough matchups, but Josh Palmer and Quentin Johnston, especially if Lad McConkey's dealing with a shoulder injury, you can maybe go back to that for a spot start, though it is against Kansas City. Their pass defense has been a little bit easier to pass against lately, so that's, all right. Demarcus Robinson scored a touchdown for the Rams. They're going to have a really tough matchup against Buffalo. And one guy I really like actually is Jalen Tolbert and Brandon Cooks for the Dallas Cowboys, getting pieces of that Cowboys-Cincinnati game, hoping that turns into another shootout like we just saw with the Steelers. For tight ends, again, back to the same well. Schoonmaker, assuming that Jake Ferguson is not able to play, and even if he is, honestly, you might even still want to spot start Schoonmaker if you're desperate. I like Cole Kmet. Again, Caleb Williams has just been passing a lot. San Francisco looks like they're on the ropes. I don't hate it. Mike Gesicki at Dallas. Even if T. Higgins is in, if you're just, again, looking for desperation plays. I like the Muth against Cleveland. Again, the last time that he scored besides the Cincinnati game was against Cleveland. So I think that's a good spot start. And Noah Gray, if he's out there and you want to chase the Kansas City touchdown, they're facing the Chargers. I don't hate that. And then on defense, you have the New Orleans Saints are on the road against the New York Giants. Whether you want to take either the Jacksonville Jaguars and hope for the Will Levis turnover, or you want to take the Tennessee Titans against the Jaguars, both of those defenses, even though the Titans just got shellacked by the Commanders, Jaguars are no Commanders. I would take both defenses there. And I like the Dolphins against the Jets. Aaron Rodgers had another errant interception. They won with like special teams and defense. The offense is still struggling a lot. So I would take the Dolphins in a home matchup, division matchup against the Jets. All right, that's it for me on this Monday morning in December. We will be back, and when I say we, I mean probably just me. I'll be back doing a live on Thursday, I imagine, at the regular time. So Thursday at 7 Eastern, going through all of the start-sit matchups for Week 14, basically the last week of the fantasy playoffs. And then we'll be back on Sunday to do the question show, and I'll do one more Hearts and Farts for Week 14, but this show's probably going to pare down as we get into the fantasy playoffs, and I'm going to focus just on helping answer questions and matchups and that kind of thing. Getting towards this end of the season, starting to whittle things down. So Hearts and Farts, the last one officially will be next week. So please enjoy this show. Please enjoy the remaining Hearts and Farts. But then after that, once we get into the fantasy playoffs, we're going to get a little bit more serious. And we'll just be doing the two shows weekly to make sure that you're primed and ready for your fantasy playoffs. So thank you guys so much for following along this year. If you haven't already, please make sure that you like and subscribe. It really helps with the show and the algorithm and all the BS in the background. But until the next time, I'll catch all of you guys on the flip side.
He's running down the middle by the 50. He's at the 30. He's bare-chested and banging his chest. Now he runs the opposite way. He runs at the 50. He runs at the 40. The guy is drunk, but there he goes. The 20. They're chasing him. They're not going to get him. Waving his arms, bare-chested. Somebody stop that man. Here comes